running microphones connected properly.
Testing, testing. We're almost ready
So we're good.
in case things start popping up.
Instagram's good. Instagram's almost up. There we go.
All right. Well, if you were with us a minute ago, you just experienced a catastrophic failure, and we just now
It was a minor thing, yes, but you couldn't hear us. So
yeah, but we got it up and running again. So we are going to do a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm Paul with Hyperbaric.plus, and this is Keith, my good friend with PrevailOverCancer.com, and he's got a little
medical disclaimer. So the information we're providing today is for health information and education. It is not a diagnosis. It is not a suggestion for your treatment. It's information. And if you have any questions about how to use this information, contact your healthcare provider that knows more about what you need. And then supplements. We'll talk about supplements. Supplements are not intended and approved by the government to treat or prevent healthcare issues or diagnose healthcare issues, but it doesn't mean that they aren't helpful, but they're not approved for that use. And there is research supporting it too. But check with your doctor once again before you make any changes.
So just so you know, a lot of the guys that are doing these kind of podcasts say it's entertainment.
I guess it is.
Yeah, it's entertainment. It's not to be medical advice. It's
okay.
to be entertainment.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I like to think of it as information and education.
Yeah,
it's learning.
Go.
That's what
That's what it is. And there's a lot of people that I watch on TV talking about what we are going to.
That's right.
Killer T cells.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep those at their very optimum level so that they can do what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, they're T cells. Matter of fact, there's a lot of press on TV and social media. Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, something like that. I'm sorry, Patrick, about mispronouncing your name, but he's a very brilliant doctor, and he has a drug that increases interleukin-15. It's called Activa, that he's got approved for bladder cancer. He's trying to get approved uses for other cancers, but it's a new drug, and it's not owned by big pharma, so he doesn't have the billions of dollars to do the human studies. So he's struggling to get approved for other cancers. Another country has approved it for another cancer. And
is it just for a couple of cancers, not necessarily wide?
No, actually, it is important for almost all cancers because it supports the T cell. So interleukin-15 is a chemical that's in our body that when elevated actually stimulates the T cells to work better. And so
I shared all this with one of my clients that's looking and going to the United Emirates that's who has
maybe maybe they're the one that approved it for another cancer.
It is. Or Saudi Arabia, United Emirates. I don't know if there's a difference between those two, but anyway, over there, and he talks about it a great deal because when he got approved over there, he's like, I built this in the U.S. I really wanted to promote it in the U.S. I have so many people knocking on my door wanting to be part of this study, and they've had 10,000. I think now they're up to 15 or 20,000 people that have applied for compassionate care. And he's been able to process like 175. I mean, he's just one clinic.
Right.
And so he said, why we build all this, we get it going in the U.S., and then you have to go to overseas to the Middle East to utilize it.
Right. And that has to do with the approval by the federal government agencies. And so, which is very frustrating. And the reason I want to talk about the T cell, though, thing, and matter of fact, I'm actually making frequent posts about this on social media because it is important. Supporting the T cells, that is kind of like the first soldier in our body that's supposed to attack cancer cells. And they can become exhausted or not work. And so I'm always trying to share information and have a whole series. I have a blog post. Before I forget also, I'm going to be looking at a handout to make sure I kind of cover everything. And this handout is at Hyperbaric.plus and also the Learning Center at PrevailOverCancer.com. And I'm actually going to create another page and kind of do like what you've done and put all the seminar notes on that other page, so it's always there. And so anyway, but this is at the bottom of the Learning Center. And then also I have a blog post about it too. But so I'm going to be covering some brief things. We only have so much time. We've got about 30 minutes. And about what to do for, well, number one, what are T cells? And why they're important, and then what can we do to help it. Right. And so I'll just start off with that. So
I'm going to try not to interrupt you.
No, yeah, ask questions. Matter of fact, we have people at table and in here. If you have questions, raise your hand and try to get Paul's. No, I can't see you. It's easy, but raise your hand and ask a question. And those of you that are viewing today, also submit your questions. So Ryan is with us again this week, and so he's going to help us with that. He'll give us these questions at the end, and so in about 30 minutes. I'll try to remind you too, as new people are joining in, about submitting your questions, and so we can print those. We'll answer those the best that we can. So, and then also, on my website, there's a contact form. So we had a person that I had, actually it's a different seminar I was giving, and so the mics weren't working right, and so she had to end up emailing me so I could get that question. So actually, I did answer the question later, but she'd left the seminar. So, but anyway, yeah, so email, question, that's what we're here for, is to answer these questions. Yep. So, okay. So, and Paul, I give you permission to ask questions. Yeah. So sometimes, and definitely you have thoughts, and that's important because people have the same thoughts,
right.
On this. So it's actually very important type thing. Excuse me. So T cells. T cells are part of a group that's in the lymphocytes, the white blood cells, that are responsible for attacking things, getting rid of things that aren't supposed to be in the body. And that's going to include various different things, including cancers, which is currently my specialty, and most cancers. And I could go through the list, but the list is going to be comprehensive to save time. Viral infections, almost all virus infections. Whenever that virus gets into a cell and infects that cell, it's altered, and the goal is actually the T cell's supposed to recognize that and start attacking it, and then it's a whole process, no matter what these are that T cells doing, it starts attacking it, and it sends out messaging chemicals for other cells to come in and attack too. So it's a whole cascade of effects can happen once the T cells recognize this. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of like the first line, not the only one, but part of the first line for attacking these cells. But many cancers, viral infections, almost all virus infections, bacterial infections, Lyme infection. So we deal a lot with that with hyperbarics, and let's see here. Let's think what other bacterial chronic infections, mycoplasma, even some weird things that can happen in the lungs, even. It's our immune system that's supposed to recognize that and get rid of it. Fungal and parasitic infections, fungal and candida, for example, where we are exposed to these funguses. It's in our food, it's in the soil, and it's just part of normal things. But if it does get into the body, it's our immune system's responsibility to get it out. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're trying to do, support the T cells to do that.
And when it turns into a problem is because your body's immune system is down.
It's not working right. That is correct.
Typically, it's going to take care of it.
That's correct. And so
parasitic, you kind of skipped, how many cancers are they finding that are parasitic?
Well, and so cancers are definitely parasitic. They're living off of the host, definitely. But, we are learning more and more about this. There are several people, matter of fact, Doug Coffin, in case you're watching, what was the name of his show? Know the Cause. Matter of fact, that's his Instagram page also, I believe it is. And so many years ago, he was talking about funguses, mm-hmm. and all the different health problems that are caused by that. Mm-hmm. And then there are certain things that we do in our body that allows that to happen. And part of that is it reduces the effectiveness of the immune system to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. So Doug, well, I appreciate what you've been doing for many years. Mark Lintern, I believe that's the correct way to pronounce the last name, from United Kingdom, has a book, The Cancer Resolution, and also talking about this in great detail. There's a lot of research. Mm-hmm. Now they're even finding fungal DNA inside cancer cells.
Well, look at what happened to Shy. I mean,
right.
That whole thing was caused by mold in an ice machine.
Right.
And she, working with her doctor, identified the DNA of the mold was the same DNA of the tumor on her kidney.
So we're exposed to that. So in her case, it was her ice maker. Was so we're always talking about that. So the fact that here in the United States, North America, we use ice in everything, we need to be rethinking that.
I used to,
definitely,
but
and I still
don't
do
anymore.
Sometimes. But yesterday, actually, we went to a restaurant. We did not. And matter of fact, it's like people go, no ice? Yes, no ice, just water. We don't want that. So, so parasitic infections, also and fungal infections, any kind of infection, virus infection or bacterial infection increases inflammation, and inflammation is a driver of cancer too. So there's many aspects of it. We're still learning that, and we're actually just now have the equipment to where we can test the DNA inside those cancer cells. And so we're actually learning about the genetic markers of the tumors. And so, of course, the most drivers of that, big pharma trying to prescribe a drug for a genetic issue inside a tumor. But we can also do food and lifestyle and supplements, also knowing certain genetics about a tumor. Autoimmune conditions, and so MS and diabetes, type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis. I have a history of that. But I've done enough that now I test negative, and I feel so much better, unless I eat bad. And when I start eating bad, I start going back into that. And then...
so you're looking at inflammation markers.
Yes, inflammation markers.
Yeah, that's what you're testing
for. So, rheumatoid factor, or literally RA, rheumatoid arthritis factor, was positive. And I actually had carpal tunnel syndrome in both hands at the same time. And the doctor was wondering, well, would you have autoimmune issues? Well, I had a family member, a grandparent with rheumatoid arthritis. So we did that test, and it was positive. And I didn't know of anything else, but typically rheumatoid arthritis is actually bilateral issues, inflammation, both sides of the body. And I didn't realize also I had problems in my hips. And so actually I had both hips replaced and had carpal tunnel in both hands. Now I have to admit, the hands, I was abusing my hands. And so I, as a pharmacist, I was working 9-10 hours a day, and then I go home and I was actually doing computer programming for nursing home consulting programs, writing computer software. And so I was working 18 hours a day continuously with my hands. And so I had that repetition, type thing going on. My friend, it's amazing. Counting pills, opening bottles, 10 key, typewriter, every single thing I was doing was with my hands. So all the time. Then just chronic conditions. So as we're getting older, our cells aren't normal. Okay, they break down. They have a greater chance of becoming abnormal. It's our immune system's responsibility to get rid of those before they start replicating that abnormality. And well, I would say cancer, but it's our immune system responsibility. So chronic fatigue syndrome, post-viral syndromes, long virus infections. I'm not going to say that word, but Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, chronic inflammation, persistent infections, just things that are going on just don't make sense. There are some blood tests we're going to talk about to help evaluate things that may be creating a problem with T cells. Age-related, T cells just get tired like the rest of our body does. Increased infection susceptibility. If you're having infections all the time and we don't know why, we got to address that and figure that out and test for that. Vaccines do require T cells to work to create that memory, about that virus. And so for vaccinations or other type things that they give for especially people that are traveling all over the world. And then allergies even. So allergies and asthma, dermatitis, eczema, food sensitivities, mast cell activations, imbalance actually goes into autoimmune type things, the Th1, Th2, and Th17, which is also more like autoimmune type problems related to T cells. So there's some T cells that are good and there's some T cells that aren't good. We got to have that balance, with that. So almost everybody wants to know that, okay, well, what pill can I take? I'm going to honor that this time. We're going to start with the pills, okay, and like supplements, okay. What supplements help the T cells? And vitamin D3 vitamin D3, actually the T cells have a VDR, a vitamin D receptor on them, and they attach to that, and now the T cell is going to function better. And it's not like it's going to be 100%. Now, an example, actually genetically, my vitamin D receptor doesn't work. The VDR is negative from both parents, and so that means my T cells have a knock against them. They're, instead of being 100%, they're going to be 70% or so. That increases my risk of all of these things we're talking about, and I have some problems. So I do take my vitamin D3, even though my VDR is negative, but I don't rely on that. I still take it, but now I'm doing other things to compensate for it. So, but vitamin D3 is extremely important. It helps out with the T cells to function better. And so I do have information about dosages and food sources like fatty fish and egg yolks and sunlight. We have to be out in the sunshine this time of year now. We're in the springtime. And I made a point to be, short sleeve or a T-shirt and shorts working in the garden Saturday and Sunday. It was a little cool, but I want to maximize my skin exposure. Even though, once again, my vitamin D receptor doesn't work, but I still want that because there's still some other activities that's going to do. Zinc, actually, both of these, matter of fact, even all of these, but especially vitamin D deficiency is extremely common. I find that probably like at least a fourth of my clients are taking a subtherapeutic vitamin D. So they're doing like 1,000 units. If we spend an hour in the sunshine in the springtime with shorts and a T-shirt on, we may make more like 20,000 units. In the summertime, midday sun, if we're in a swimsuit, we're going to make 20 or 30,000 units of D a day in and out within the hour. So most times, most people are probably getting a subtherapeutic dose. And then, yes, it's important to take vitamin K2 with it. And vitamin K2 helps take the calcium that was absorbed from the D and move it into the bones. And vitamin K2 is also anti-inflammatory. It's not listed on this, but it probably does have an impact on T cells. Zinc, matter of fact, at least 80% of the population in the United States are deficient in zinc, even though we're supposed to have this healthy food system, but people are not absorbing it, not able to use it, but it's important for over 300 different processes, including insulin, which means with weight management and body fat control, and P53, which I talk about quite a bit on social media, and T cells. And so that's just three or four things out of 300 different processes in the body. Many people are deficient in D. So it's important, in zinc. So it's important to get a test for that. I use the zinc taste test.
Yeah, I went and got 5 of them from Flourish the other day, and I shared them with my clientele. And out of all 5 test kits, not one person
noticed it. That's right.
Not one person could taste the zinc.
Yeah.
And so I think they all went over there, and I'm talking to Rachel. Hey, Rachel,
Right.
I need some more kits.
Yeah.
I need to send some more people because we don't know. And that's just such a simple way to test for it.
Right.
Just swishing a zinc compound in your mouth.
Swish it and swallow it.
Yeah.
And ideally it should be nasty tasting.
Yeah. Well, I never got there.
Yeah. So, but if you have enough zinc, it actually, even while I'm swishing it, it reminds me of hydrogen peroxide. It feels like it's bubbling in my mouth. But I have to take 30, 40 milligrams a day of zinc to keep it there. And when I cut back to 20 milligrams, I lose that taste with that. It's not perfect. It's a screening test, but it definitely is easy. And blood tests aren't really that accurate either, for zinc and copper balance. So zinc is very, very important. It's essential for development and activation of T cells. Selenium protects from oxidative damage. It helps keep the T cells from becoming damaged. And it just takes actually 1 Brazil nut a day to get enough. So actually I choose to do that with a Brazil nut. I eat a Brazil nut most days. If I missed it yesterday, I'm going to have 2 Brazil nuts today to kind of add that up. Like anything, you can get too much D3, you can get too much zinc, you can get too much selenium. So we have to be careful. And 6 Brazil nuts a day is not a great idea and might even increase the risk of cancer. Vitamin C, we know, matter of fact, there's all kinds of studies, from literally hundreds and maybe thousands of studies about how vitamin C helps the immune system to fight infections. And so it donates electrons, it repairs cells, and primarily that's it's more like an antioxidant. That means it's repairing the T cells from their actions. So when they're doing their job, they're using up nutrients, and the vitamin C just helps donate electrons to help them be repaired.
So when you say vitamin C, is that absorbic acid, or do you want to stick to vitamin C? I mean, what's the best way to do vitamin C?
Well, probably the best way is actually going to be fruit and vegetables, but actually we don't get very much from those. And actually how much do we really need? Well, many years ago they found out that is 60 milligrams or 100 milligrams a day. They came up with a recommended daily allowance that keeps a 20-year-old young, healthy man from getting scurvy. Well, and then the British sailors, they also were doing a lime a day, and that was good enough to keep from getting sick. But we now know that many of us probably need more like a couple of thousand milligrams a day. And then actually in some cancer treatments, they're actually going with more like 25,000 milligrams a day. 50,000, maybe even higher, depends on the body size of a person's body. So
what is the type of vitamin C that you're going to do if you do it therapeutically to where you have a loose stool? I mean, you
that's right. So if you get too much vitamin C, any kind of vitamin C, if it's not absorbed, it creates loose stools orally.
Right.
No matter what that source. Ascorbic acid is not as well absorbed as a liposomal ascorbate.
Okay.
And so a sodium ascorbate or a calcium ascorbate is going to be not as acidic and easier absorbed and provide better levels, but an ascorbate type vitamin C in a liposomal is going to be the best.
Okay.
And so, matter of fact, I've taken 10,000 units of a liposomal vitamin C and did not get diarrhea because I absorbed it so well. Cool. So liposomal are going to be better sources of vitamin C.
And that's a liquid, isn't it?
Yes, liposomal is a liquid.
Yeah.
There are some capsules, but the capsules are not probably large enough, to work well. But liposomal means that they've actually mixed that very well, at typically a high speed, in with some fats to suspend that in the fats. And our body does like fat. It typically does absorb fat unless you have a lack of a gallbladder or low gallbladder function. Then you may not be absorbing the liposomal forms of supplements. So you can take ox bile, as a supplement to help with that if you lack the gallbladder for that. And then omega-3s. So every single cell in our body, the outside part of that cell is it's called a phospholipid bilayer, and that means there's two layers of fats. Actually, they're like this. Those two layers are omega-3 fatty acids primarily. There's a few other fats, but EPA and DHA are those two main fats. If we don't have those fats in there, now we have a different shaped fat, omega-6s, for example, and a couple other fats. Those are harder, and now the cell is not as flexible, and it's not going to function as good. So having appropriate amounts of omega-3 fatty acids makes the T cell softer, more flexible, and it can do its job better and attach to cells and do its thing.
So today at 2 o'clock, I have a gentleman that is doing grass-fed and grass-finished, and he's got multiple farms that he rotates the cattle through that are all toxic free. He's been farming these for many, many years, and we had some of the beef the other day, and I'm like, dude, so he's coming again today, and I'm going to educate my clientele as to why the omega-3s go up so greatly, and the omega-6 is non-existent when you do grass-fed, grass-finished.
Right. Yeah. So these animals are eating the seeds, basically the seeds of the plants, and the plants, and they get the omega-3s from the seeds, and that's why it's healthier and different versus the grains where they feed them in the feedlots and they actually add bad fats. To that, and that goes into that animal, and then we eat that animal with those bad fats.
The fat in his beef is yellow. And that's how, I mean, I'm learning all this. I'm kind of asking you questions, am I learning right? But omega-3s are incredibly rich in his beef. And it's not, when you think about it, and it's not that much more expensive when you get the nutritional value out of it. It's not that much more expensive to go that route.
Yeah, whenever possible, when you can. It's kind of hard to find, somebody with that type of a beef, but grass fed and grass finished, is the best. It does taste different though.
So he's serving. So anyway, I'm in the middle of experimenting, but so far so great. I mean, I'm really excited about. I mean, he's got his meat in 5 different very high-end restaurants in Tulsa.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like, I mean, somebody explained it to me. If it's Longhorn, it's not going to be good. It's going to be chewy. It's not going to have the flavor. But if it's Angus and you do it right, it's the optimum. I mean, so I'm really excited about learning more. In fact, I've got a guy that does Wagyu and Angus mix, and he's coming to learn this gentleman's secrets today.
Good.
So they're going to start collaborating because, anyway, there's just a lot to it. And we're not getting the beef. That's been explained to me, too. All of our beef's going out of country, and we're getting Mexican beef in here. Have you heard of the screwworm?
Yes, right. Well, matter of fact, there's even some, that's one reason why the beef prices are so high, because actually they're not letting some of that through.
Right.
And so therefore, we're
the
having a
tariffs
shortage.
have also addressed is driving that. But there's a new thing that we have to be dealing with here that's making its way to the U.S. It's not here yet.
Correct.
But I've met with a gentleman yesterday that is, man, there's just a lot going on in the beef world. And I got an education yesterday that I'm going to follow up at 2 o'clock with. So anyway.
Okay, good.
But those omega-3s are important.
They are important. So actually wild game is going to have the omega-3s. So, so wild game is definitely a great option. So T-cell supporting foods, include the colorful fruits and vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, like broccoli and kale, Brussels sprouts, cephalorphanes, and I3C type items come from those cruciferous vegetables. Medicinal mushrooms, the reishi, shiitake, maitake, turkey tail, the beta-glucans in those, which is also available as a supplement, stimulate T cells. They activate them. So the beta-glucans stimulate the macrophages that stimulate the T cells. So beta-glucans from those products are very good. Be careful about overcooking or over hot beverages. Can destroy the beta-glucans. So we have to be careful about doing too hot. So actually doing a tea, more like a green or a white tea up to 173 degrees or so is the maximum you want to heat up a mushroom coffee, for example, to keep from damaging those. Fermented foods, so yogurts and kefirs and sauerkraut, kimchi, they support the gut system, which is where most of the immune system is taking place. It's estimated maybe half of our immune system comes from the gut, the intestines. So the good bacteria are fed with the fermented type products. Herbs and spices, so turmeric, which provides curcumin, ginger, garlic, oregano. These are anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, but we decrease inflammation, and now the T cells work better. Green tea, e.g. CG, and the other catechins provide more antioxidants and help ramp up the T cells so they function better. Lifestyle, exercise, and movement. So moderate exercise, but it takes, moderate means about 30 minutes a day. We can do too much. And so if we're doing too much, it actually becomes stressful and oxidative damage. So there's actually studies showing that marathon runners, after they've run a marathon, are at high risk of getting a cold or the flu. They're exhausted. I've experienced some similar type issues from other stresses that I put myself in, working on actually programs at church, good things, but working all day and then going to work at church every night and not getting enough sleep every single year I get a terrible cold, and after doing that for about a month. So all these things I've experienced. But anyway, exercise and movement is very important. So, and I always tell my clients the best exercise is the exercise you're going to do. Number one, but it takes about 150 minutes a week of exercise. That means about 30 minutes 5 times a week. And so it's actually a major challenge. I actually have it on my calendar to get it done, so that I block out a time slot so that I will be able to do it. And we'll talk about another thing I do every day too. Stress management, I talked about that in just a moment. So stress increases cortisol. Cortisol decreases T-cell activity. So we have to be mindful and practice things as a de-stressor. By the way, if you have questions, go ahead and submit those. I haven't seen any hands going up at the table yet. So, okay, any questions there? Okay, not yet. But if you have questions, submit those, and Ryan's going to print those off and give them to us in a little bit. But stress management. So chronic, an occasional stressful event is not the problem, but it's day in and day out. So we have to be very careful and address those. Let's see here. Consistent schedule is very important. I think I skipped an area. Sleep. Sleep is critical. And so it does take 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Actually, deep sleep is when the T cells work better. And so I made a post last night about that, but literally the T cells get more sticky attached to cancer cells while you're sleeping. And so that sleep, the deep sleep, is very important. And sometimes we have to do things to help with that. And one of those things is even like melatonin. And melatonin does help our immune system and the T cells to work better, and P53, almost all parts of the immune system to work better. So sleep and recovery. So we do need that 7 to 9 hours. Maintain a consistent schedule. Go to sleep at the same time. The cool room, very cool. We have a ceiling fan on, and even in the summertime, we have to have a blanket on, just so we have that cool air. One of my favorite things, besides the sleep and management, is going to be sauna and heat therapies. So once we get up to an oral temperature of 101.3, ideally, our immune system is ramped up. Fantastic to help fight infections. The T cells are included in that. That also creates what's called a heat shock protein response, where the cancer cells can't resist the T cells. So HSPs, heat shock proteins. So heat shock protein, that's actually part of my daily routine 5 days a week. Is sitting in that sauna and even doing just like some gentle movement, in that sauna, just help get the blood supply going. So I just don't chill out totally, but I'm doing some gentle movement to keep the blood supply going and raise my core temperature. And then hyperbaric air, and even a mild hyperbaric at a 1.3 atmospheres. So what was the pressure that we were at today?
So we were at 22 pounds. We were at 52 feet of seawater. Mm-hmm. When you're doing mild, 1.3 is 10 feet of seawater.
10 feet? Oh, wow.
So yeah, we're at 52.
Yeah, we're quite, but even at mild, it starts ramping up T cells.
Hey, pressure is pressure. Any pressure is beneficial.
That's right. It is. It really is. Matter of fact, even the pressure at ocean level, is sufficient to kind of help out better than the pressure that is in the mountains.
When you leave Denver and you come to Oklahoma City, because I know I'm in Oklahoma City and I have a lot of people come from Denver, you're at a therapeutic value.
Yes, here.
Because that's where you're at all the time. When you come down here, you've changed the pressure.
That's right.
You're experiencing therapeutic pressure.
That's right. So we're what, 1,200?
Yeah, we're about 800 here.
1,200, 800, okay. And so it depends on what part. So I live to the west part, and actually we're almost up on a hill out in that area, and it's about 1,200 feet there.
So, question?
More of a comment. You said we were at 52 feet today. Today we were at
75.
Excuse me. Typically, we're at 52 feet. Today, we are at 75.
That's right, 75 feet. Yes, that's correct.
Because we have a special dive for our cancer clients. They had a lot of research done with my cancer clients, and they asked me to go to 75, and that's what we do.
Yes.
So,
And so, this is a better unit than the small ones that are an inflatable. I call it inflatable, type of one. So, those only get up to 1.3, I think, and so 10 feet. So this is definitely a therapeutic type treatment. But also, matter of fact, all of this, just sprinkling this and just doing a little bit of it isn't going to help. Everything we're talking about, so whether it be the supplements, the food, the lifestyle, the heat therapy, the hyperbaric therapies, it takes at least 3 to 5 times a week to have a therapeutic effect. That means an effect that you can measure.
that's why having a sauna at home is so important. Having a soft-sided chamber at home, if that's going to get you to use it 5 times a week, is so important.
That it could help. That's correct.
But you might even alternate and come in here 2 times a week with that pressure at home. So
Exactly.
But all of these, like you said, it's a matter of you have to do it.
Yes.
Exercise, you got to do it.
And then environmental factors, toxins. We're exposed to toxins all the time. We were talking about, I can't remember what it was now, but we are exposed to toxins. In the food that what we were talking about, the skin thing. What we were talking about in the chamber. I can't remember what it was.
I don't know.
I can't remember. Talking about so many different things.
Get in the chamber.
Yeah, and so there's a list of questions.
Thank you,
So
Brian.
environmental factors, but toxins can definitely be an issue. So filtering water, is important to filter out those toxins. We're also talking about adding minerals to the water too, very important. And air quality. Matter of fact, it's interesting how people that are exposed to pollution have an increased risk of cancer and other health problems. So it weakens the immune system. And then, so repurposed medication and other natural compounds. So I'm just going to fly through this and then we'll go through the questions. But, metformin, it just doesn't just lower blood glucose. There's a lot of other things that it helps with. Actually, metformin is a derivative of a natural product. So that's how the drug companies don't just pull things out of the air. They do use AI models now to kind of come up with ideas, but they're out there digging things up and looking at flowers and plants and soil and dirt and evaluating those chemicals in there. And so once again, metformin originally was a natural product. And so even statin drugs to lower cholesterol, do have some support for T cells. Although there's actually a lot of other things do too, but the drug companies did those studies, so we have to evaluate that. Curcumin from turmeric, EGCG from green tea, quercetin from kind of like the skin, the peels of apples and onions, also have a significant impact on T cells, and resveratrol. We think of maybe wine, but there's nuts and seeds also have resveratrol in it, and it doesn't take gigantic doses of the resveratrol to have an impact on the body. So once again, there's actually this handout at prevailovercancer.com and at hyperbaric.plus. You can download this handout. So any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, T, for pointing that out. And so, matter of fact, T said, how about that? There's an immune cell named after me earlier today. So, can you talk about viruses and what makes up a virus? And so, oh, wow. That's a whole several seminars. So viruses, there's a weird, contraption, and it's a mechanical contraption, literally, that, it's hard to explain it, but it actually, it attaches to cells and delivers part of its RNA, into cells, and that starts duplicating. And then that cell releases those, and then it starts attacking other cells. So, there's many different types of viruses, probably thousands of viruses. and I'm not an expert in that area, so it's kind of a difficult question for me to answer for you. How can we help the T to eliminate HPV? Well, so everything we talked about, so HPV virus is, we have to do the T cell type things, and sometimes we have to do supplements. So actually, I know people that have HPV that actually will flare when they're under a stressful time in their life, and then it will get better, and then it will flare again. Once again, stress plays a big role in it, but all these things I was talking about, so download that guide. So it has everything listed: lifestyle, supplements, and even repurposed medications. So can leiomyosarcoma be cured just by taking dietary changes or making dietary changes? I don't rely on one thing for any type of cancer, and actually even especially for leiomyosarcoma. I am familiar with that. It's multifactorial. We have to address it from many different angles. So that's actually a very rare one, and it is actually kind of a challenging one, but many different things, not just food. So do not just do food. Do not just take a pill thinking that's going to work. And same thing, I wouldn't just do traditional treatments either. That I wouldn't trust that, because I have seen that not work. How do you determine the quality of a vitamin D drug, for example? Quality on D, we don't know for sure unless you follow up with your blood test and assess, don't guess. So by doing a vitamin D3 blood test, you know where you're at. If you make a brand change, after 3 or 6 months, you've got to do another blood test. Vitamin D is a definite concern. I do have a free guide on my website about quality on supplements. It's a red cover that's on the graphic download about quality supplements. But you have to get a blood test for vitamin D3. We don't know, but do not get it at a discount store. I've seen more people's vitamin D3 blood level decrease when they start taking a discount store product. So vitamin D3 is not a vitamin. It is a hormone like melatonin, and I've actually seen significant changes in blood levels based off of discount stores. So it's kind of hard to know on some supplements. They may have good manufacturing processes, but if it sits in a truck out in the parking lot or shipped all the way across the United States, it's 110 degrees outside, that it may not survive that. And then how long is it sitting on the shelf? So it's kind of a challenge, but follow up with the blood test. Let's see. Nattokinase is a good tool to remove the cancer cells' protective layer and allow T cells to remove them, ? So yes, nattokinase is we call it a proteolytic. That means it eats away at the proteins, on cancer and tumors, and it kind of exposes them and makes them more visual, so that the immune system can say, oh no, that's not supposed to be here, let's go get it. So yes, I do use nattokinase. Serrapeptase is another one in that category, and then pancreatic enzymes. So there's several different types of options. Those have to be on an empty stomach. If you take a digestive enzyme with a meal, it's going to help you digest the food and not help you to eat away at a tumor to expose it for the immune system to start attacking it. So what tests do you recommend to check the vitamin levels? Well, it depends on the vitamin. So there are some B vitamin levels. B12 and folate are easy to test for, zinc and copper, magnesium. You can do blood tests for them. You can do some other evaluations. We do a zinc taste test to get an idea about zinc levels. Iodine is a urine test. It's one of the better tests on that. So it really depends. Actually, I have a blog post about that. So if you'll go to my blog post, and you can do a site search, or it depends on if you have a desktop computer, you can go real easy and find that search. Type in vitamin tests, and there's all kinds of things about that, and a special blog post for that. Why don't we create more T cells and inject them? Well, actually, they're doing some things like that. They're actually creating some T cells, and there's some synthetic ones that they're using. There's what are called CAR T cells, and I'm not sure if I get that acronym correct. I don't know if it's CAR or CART T cells that are actually, they're a T cell that they're injecting or ramping up the T cells. So yes, there are some mechanisms that they do for that. What form of zinc did you mention was good to take? And so that's the first part of your question. So I like zinc glycinate because it does not require much stomach acid. Glycinate, it just pops off and allows a zinc ion to be absorbed. And the other part of your question, would you be able to create a list of when to take each of these supplements? I have that on my website. Most of these supplements are on my website, and I do talk about that. And so each one might be a little different. So beta-glucans and mushroom coffees are better empty stomach, where vitamins and minerals are going to be with food. And some of the polyphenols are better absorbed with food or with oils, or I use the pathway supplements because they're actually bound to a protein and to increase the absorption of them. So it's a pretty broad question, and we don't have time to go over the details, but I have a lot of information on those, on my website. Methylene blue is really good, question mark. Methylene blue, I've not seen the impact on T cells, but it typically acts as an antioxidant and helps the mitochondria to repair and function better. So we can actually get a little bit more energy, but there's a high dose methylene blue that's given IV, or you can take it orally, and now it becomes a pro-oxidant similar to vitamin C. And so, yes, there are practitioners that are using high-dose methylene blue, like very high dose. Once again, I have a blog post that goes into more detail about that. And so we make and eat a lot of curd at home. Is it good? I heard acidic environments is not good and it prevents cancer. How can we take care of it? So curds, I assume they're talking about doing dairy curds, which is I'm not an expert on that, but it's kind of like a fermentation and aging process, of dairy. Be similar to
making cheese.
Cheese and cheeses, you can get actually curds. There used to be Watanga used to have some curds, from making cheddar
cheese factory.
Cheddar cheese there. And so, yes, actually, that can be good, and it depends, though, on the animal source. I'll qualify that statement, but it definitely could be good. It has definitely some minerals in it, and probably some bacteria that could be great for our immune system. Acidic environments are not good. You have to assess and don't guess. Do a urine and saliva test to see if you are in an acid environment or if your body is acidic. If it is, we do have to correct that. So cancer cells have a tendency to make answer. And choline and liposomal supplements, isn't that a building block for fuel for cancer? So choline, actually cancer cells use the same nutrients the rest of our cells have to have. And so cancer cells can use choline, and it might be a factor, but it's not the only thing. So we have to have choline. Actually, choline is one of the fats that we have to have. And actually, we have to have it to make brain chemicals. So once again, we have to be very careful about trying to eliminate certain things. We may want to do things like intermittent fasting or short-term fasting to take things away temporarily, because cancer cells are going faster. They want more of it. So that would be one thing I would be looking at, is trying to do more things like intermittent, short-term, and maybe a little bit of an extended fast to try to help starve cancer cells temporarily. Oh, that's it.
You did good. You got right up to the hour. We did skip a couple of things. So if you look at the, if you do go and download the handout, implementation protocol.
Yes,
was a good one. You got phase 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I didn't go to that because I knew I wasn't going to have time.
But
so yes,
if you go download that's good. There's a lot of good information there, and then the assessment and the different types of labs to do.
And some more questions. We aren't going to have time today.
We're done. Keith will answer those other questions, and thanks for all the questions today.
Yeah, it's
you
great.
have a couple of sheets worth of them, and so I know Keith follows up with all that. He'll answer those questions. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I appreciate all these questions. That's awesome. So I'm Paul with Hyperbaric.plus, and this is my great friend Keith Bishop at Prevail Over Cancer. If you need a coach for cancer, I don't know how people are finding any guidance it's impossible to find guidance in the medical world
Yeah.
that people are looking for. I mean, they're trying to find out how can I, like you said in the chamber, a lot of your clients are on chemo and radiation.
Right.
How can you support the body at the highest level while you're doing that?
Right.
And can you bring those quantities of chemo and radiation down by supplementing with other things? Isn't
Right.
that
Yeah,
the
so
trick today?
yes, that's the trick. And so, matter of fact, sometimes we're trying to do low dose chemo, but targeted supplements can actually enhance the effectiveness of chemo often or immunotherapy, and decrease the side effects. So that's kind of what I'm doing. So I assess and don't guess. I mean, I assess the body. My goal is to actually build them up and make the person stronger, and so they go just fly through their treatment.
One of our clients that's working with you just recently had a procedure that I think is somewhat
Yes.
new, isn't it? And they actually took the chemo into a vein, into his heart, and they dumped out
It's a radioactive.
that has a very short half-life, and it went right to the tumor, and they'll go back and do another spec, I guess, or another. What kind of imaging do they do on that when they go back to look at the size?
Yeah, a PET scan
Yeah,
or
they'll
a
do
PET
another-
or a CT scan.
So he said
right.
this summer they'll do another PET scan to see how effective it was. But
Right.
he said, man, it wasn't like doing regular chemo, and he feels great. He's at work. When I called him, he said, yeah, I had that done a couple of weeks ago, and I feel
Yeah.
really good. And so there's all kinds of new things coming
Yeah,
out.
there are really, and
Yeah.
so don't give up.
Nope.
Keep working at it, and so that particular one actually is a newer treatment. It's actually an antigen, but what it is actually they actually combined it to kind of like I don't know exactly what they were using, but kind of like a immune cell, so that it would actually adhere specifically to the cancer cell.
Yep. But what Dr. Patrick's doing, and there's precision oncology going on out in Western U.S. There's so many new things coming out, and they're trying to get it approved for insurance reimbursement.
Right.
I mean, that's the big thing is, okay, all these tools are out here, but we got to get our insurance to recognize it and pay for it. And the only way that's going to happen, guys, is if you go to bat. You
Right.
got to make your voice heard. And that's the only way any of this is going to change. And I think we've got the right people in our administration to drive some of those
Yeah,
changes.
we're seeing more changes
Yep.
this year than we've seen in a long time.
So anyway, thanks for joining us. And we got to get in the chamber. We got another dive coming up. Keith, thanks a million.
You're welcome.
Keith with PrevailOverCancer.com and Paul at Hyperbaric.plus. Thank you all again. Look for us next week. Thank you, Ryan. You do good. When the audio's working. I'm glad you caught it. Did somebody send you a note?
No, I'll check like every 2 seconds. Because it will take something to happen and just, so. We're good.
Guys, thanks for letting me jump
right into that podcast.
Well, good seeing you.